What is up, friends? Rob here, the Medicare minister, and I'm back with a brand new Spitting Fire Leadership podcast for you today that I pray puts fresh wind in your sails and pushes you to go after your dreams, because I truly believe that God has made you on purpose for a purpose. So why not start living on purpose today? And today I have Mr. Jovan Glasglow with me. Jovan, will you say hey to everybody?
Man, what's up, brother? I'm excited to be here. Hi, hello to everybody watching. Excited for this conversation today, man. Let's do it.
Well, I'm excited too, man. I know you're going to spit some serious fire today, but before we dive into this interview, as always, I want to remind all of you to please like, comment, subscribe below. That way you're notified every time we drop a fresh interview, as well as our other content that we put on this channel. So yeah, man, I've been looking forward to you coming on the podcast, excited about what you're going to share today. But what I want to do is just take a moment, as I do with every guest. Maybe if you could give us what I call that Sports Center highlight version of your life, maybe a little background, kind of the transition, and then where you're at today.
Sure. Let's start, I guess, from where I'm from, because the more I speak is the more you hear my accent jump out at you. I'm from the Caribbean islands of Antigua and Barbuda. So we're known for our beaches. They say we have 365 beautiful beaches, one for each day of the year. So that's kind of a claim to fame.
Yeah.
Or it's at least what they tell the tourists. So we just go with it, right? Grew up on a small island, man, really small family, tight-knit family, sent off to college at the age of 18. And they sent me to the best place to send a young boy struggling with puberty and identity. They sent me to Miami, Florida. So I came from the small Caribbean island, smack dab in the middle of Miami, Florida. And it was a whirlwind for me. Went to school for aeronautical engineering, nothing to do with what I do now, but graduated with that degree and really had a heart and passion for people. And I think that really grew from the relationship I had with my father. My father was an influence of a change. He was a man that really used his voice and his heart to lead and inspire others. He was an educator as well. And so I think a lot of that rubbed off on me. So from leaving college, really started to get more into the world of personal development, professional development, had a really successful career. And that's kind of where I started to exercise a little bit more of my gift. And fast forward now 10 years, I have the opportunity to speak to thousands of people all over this world, coach, author, social entrepreneur, that started a mental wellness company as well to just address a lot of what's happening from a mental wellness standpoint. So just really a man on a mission to help people heal. It's really my focus and my goal, man. So yeah.
No, I definitely love that. And I know that we met a little over a month ago now, roughly, and you shared some of your story at a little conference that we were at, a little getaway there in Florida. And I really loved what you were sharing about purpose and identity. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that story there? You shared a little bit about your father and the tragedy, or some tragedy that happened there that kind of helped shape you as well.
Sure, 100%. So father being my childhood hero, my Superman, man, the guy who I looked up to for everything. I remember this one summer, I'd go back home for a summer job. This one summer, he walked into a bank that I used to work at, and we'd go to lunch every Friday. And this Friday, he had this look on his face, man. Never seen my dad have that look. My dad was 6'5", about 280 pounds, so he was a big dude. But he had this look of just concern and despair. And knowing my father, that was really an eye-opening moment for us. It kind of slowed down time for me. I remember walking with him to the vehicle. He stopped at the back of the car. I could never forget it. It was the silver Nissan Pathfinder. And we were standing in the parking lot. There's a palm tree behind him. It's burnt in my memory like that. And he said to me, son, I've been having some complications and I'm not really sure what's going on, but we're running to the doctor. We're doing some tests. But he's like, man, everything's going to be all right. I'm hopeful of that. Within about a year, I saw my dad lost about 90 pounds. And after that, he lost his battle to what we now learn to be cholangiocarcinoma. It's a rare form of bile duct cancer. And I'll be honest with you, man, when my dad died, my faith died. My hope died. My aspiration, or even my thought of a future, died, because, you know, I always wondered to myself, was father never having a father, or having a great father, having him taken prematurely, right?
Yeah.
So that really became now I realize was the catalyst to my journey and my story and a lot of what I'm doing now. But at the time, it ripped a hole in my heart, a hole in my world, a hole that I believe was only a God-sized hole. And unfortunately, I tried to fill it with things, relationships, perceptions, whatever the case may be, to just feel. And that led me down the road of obviously making some not so good decisions. But interestingly enough, I always had that voice, that small internal compass that says that, man, you were created for more and I have a plan for your life. And so in going through a lot of just that, and we can dive a little bit deeper into the story between then and now, I realized that it was my greatest pain that actually gave me purpose. In losing my father to cancer so abruptly, I realized the fragility of life and developed this heart and passion to use my gift to help people to not just get up every day and exist, but to live, to not just go through the motions, but to really make movement and to maximize every moment, to not even focus on pursuing happiness, but fulfillment. Yeah. And so I truly believe that where I used to see my father's miss ultimately became my mission. That's really what I realized happened at the end of the day. So that's a little bit of what I believe really turned the needle as it relates to my life's purpose and what I'm doing now.
Sure. And so want to dive into the faith part. Sure. Right? Because there's a lot of people would have allowed something that tragic. And I can speak to that because my wife and I lost a son years ago. And if it wasn't for my faith, right? And listen, in that moment, it feels like everything is gone, right? And you did, like you said, you feel hopeless. You feel like, man, everything is just going crazy. But so far as a paradigm shift, we hear that word a lot in the self-development, personal help space, success space. But paradigm shift spiritually, what had to happen for you in order for you to say, you know what, I'm not going to allow this to be a prison, because that could be a prison to hold me back, but instead I'm using it as a platform for the message that I believe God, has given me?
Well, I think first and foremost, you can't save yourself in a situation like that where you go through that level of hardship and you're a person who is naturally driven and wired for, I'm wired to go after what it is that I want. And if there's a problem or a challenge, I usually try to put the pieces together. But I realized when I ran into a wall, or what I call it now, a giant, to some degree, I couldn't save myself. I couldn't figure out how to get from A to Z, or from surviving to thriving, or from being broken and hurt to feeling and having hope for a future and different things like that. So it's the revelation and really the awareness of the fact that I can't save myself that I think brought me to this level of submission and surrender to say, well, if I can't save myself, then where does my saving come from? And interestingly enough, I grew up in the faith, I grew up in the church. So this was an interesting dynamic because my father was a pastor.
Okay.
There's depth there, because what happens when the man who preaches faith, right, ends up running into something that his faith didn't seem to fix at the time?
That's good.
Because even when my father was going through his diagnosis and he was struggling with this, he would get on the mic and he would preach and declare that he was going to be healed and everything was going to be well. And he was positive, but God had a different plan. And so what do you do when you're in that situation of even just really realizing that, wow, not only that I can't save myself, but the foundational pieces of what I learned about my faith were kind of tested at that point.
Sure.
Because it didn't make sense to me. How could a good God do something that hurt this bad? And so to kind of answer your question here on what I believe is the turning point to that, I truly believe that it was this level of surrender that could only occur as a result of me realizing that I wasn't in control, that none of this, no matter the top level achievements I had in my life, the things that I was doing professionally, the accolades that I had, I still lacked control in the grand scheme of things. So it put me on this journey to stray away from religion and start to pursue relationship. And that's where I started to find my answer.
Sure. As someone who's been in the ministry for over 20 years, served in pretty much every position you can serve in, recently lead pastor, church planner, why do you think so many people struggle coming to faith? You know, I heard one pastor said it's that the church just has a branding problem, right? The way that we package this Christianity, but then you have people that argue, well, you know, you package it this way, it's too extreme this way. You package it this way, it's too extreme this way. What is your view on that?
Sure. We live in a world that's been disappointed far too many times. What happens at the end of the day is when we think about this idea of God and faith, we think about the man or the mentor or the woman or the mentor that we put in the position of a God in our lives. And you say, when we allow man and mentors become our God, and then man and mentors disappoint us, we start to believe that God is a disappointment, right?
Yeah.
And so once we deal with a world that's now disappointed in people, it's not so much that they're even disappointed in God, they're disappointed in people who say they believe in God. And so when the people who believe in God begin to disappoint the people who don't know God, then they say, I don't want your God or anything to do with your God if this is how you judge, this is how you act, this is how you hate, this is how you use those words. So we as believers, to some degree, have a responsibility to carry the weight of what we represent. So I think we live in a world of people who are disappointed. And so, you know, when you deal with disappointed people, I think the biggest thing is to ask yourself, well, what is disappointment? Disappointment is really unmet expectations. It's what you expected from me, I didn't give to you.
Right.
So I think the gap here is you have people who are disappointed in a God that they never gave a chance to in relationship, if that makes sense. They never got to know that God personally. And so they judged God from the lens of that individual or those people or those mentor, that family member or that loved one that hurt them.
Right.
So I think we're just a hurt world.
No, I totally agree. And, you know, as someone who's also in the personal development, obviously believe in self-help, you know, this is just a spontaneous question as I'm sitting here talking with you and listening to you talk. What do you believe is the difference between self-help and the power that comes with the gospel?
100%. That's such a powerful question, man. I think for me, I conflict for many years with this concept of self-help. Because for a person who is a speaker, coach, all these different aspects, you know, to walk that line between faith and works or potential and position or self-help versus all of my help comes from. It's a tricky place.
Yeah.
Until I started to really grasp the concept of input versus outcome. I think our responsibility as it relates to self-help is to focus on the input. I believe God is the one that does the outcome. I think it becomes a problem when we try to now manipulate the outcome as a result of how we do the input. But our responsibility at the end of the day is how we show up, what we do on a day-to-day basis, how we serve others, how we love, how we address the brokenness in our own lives. That to me is what self-help is. It's how am I showing up on a day-to-day basis to maximize the truth that I know or the truth that I need to know, right? And applying that to my life and allowing God to be the one that actually does the result, the timing of it, the way it looks, all these different aspects that sometimes we try to manipulate. And I think that's where anxiety actually starts to happen and depression and all these different things is when we try to manage all the different pieces. But as it relates to development and stuff, I think we have a responsibility at the end of the day to really maximize the input as we allow God to really control the outcome. Now we measure the outcome if you want to talk practically, but as it relates to the whole development space, I think it's really an input versus outcome type of thing. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that. You know, when I used to preach from the pulpit, when I was a pastor, I used to tell people that, you know, I believe in personal development. I agree exactly what you say, but I tell people the same self that tells you how wonderful you are 1 minute is the same self that will tear you down the next. And 100%. So for me, I need something higher than just self. And as you well know, and we've talked about this even on the phone and in meetings, the Zoom, I just live from a position of fully loved and fully accepted every day. And if I didn't have that, myself wouldn't be enough. So I'm so glad you shared that. You said something real quick, and I want to go back. I loved what you said about fulfillment and happiness. Will you tell us the difference in your own words?
Sure. We're wired as a world to chase happiness. Happiness is a possession, a position, or level of prominence. It's a thing. So we tell ourselves, man, if I get more things, I get that nicer house or that bigger car or that better looking situation, then I'll be happy. And the problem with that is that when we begin to put our value into things and the things go, so do we, right? Happiness is a thing, but fulfillment is being something. It's being whole and complete, lacking nothing. Fulfillment says that irregardless of what's happening around me, irregardless of the things that I have, I am peaceful. I am joy. I am positive. I am whatever the case may be. And we're conditioned so much to say, man, I got to go after this thing, this job, not realizing that I say this in one of my books. I said, what you chase will always run from you, but what you pursue will find you. And in breaking that down, really where I'm going with this is that we never actually catch the thing that we chase. There's always a bigger house, nicer car, more money that needs to be made. So there's always a chase. But when we begin to actually pursue fulfillment, that's us being whole, complete, lacking nothing. That's the healing work. That's the growth work. That's truly understanding our value and our purpose and getting in alignment. Then interestingly enough, the things that we were chasing begin to chase us, right? So it's one of those things that instead of being validated by the thing, I am already validated because I am something. So those things don't change the way I feel about me, whether it's Monday, Wednesday, rain, sleet, storm, or snow. I'm Jovan Glasglow, and I operate from that space because I'm fulfilled. And to go even deeper, fulfillment isn't so much a position. You don't get to a position, say, I'm fulfilled in this position. Fulfillment is a perspective of a current position. I got to break that down for you because a lot of the times, 100%. A lot of the times we think that when I get to this position or this place, then I'll be fulfilled. But not realizing that fulfillment is really in your perspective of where you are, not so much in where you hope to go. So let me make it super tangible for you. You and I could be in the exact same position in life, whether that be, okay, say we're wanting to start a business. We start a small business and within a year, we're literally the same. I'm talking revenue, cost, everything is exactly the same. You started that business because your purpose in starting that business was to say, man, one day I just want to be the most wealthy entrepreneur ever, to prove to the people in my life that always discounted me that I'm worthy and I'm valuable. Okay. My stance on the other side is to say, hey, I just want to be able to be in a position as an entrepreneur to serve more people, to solve more problems, to help people arrive at different fulfillment, whatever the case may be. Yours is in trying to validate yourself through this thing. Mine is understanding that I'm already validated. And so I'm serving from that place. So my perspective versus your perspective will never necessarily be the same. And so my fulfillment at that time in that position would always be different from yours. The simple way of saying this is not so much of where we are, but it's how we look at where we are, because we understand who we are, irregardless of where we are.
Yeah. Man, you're spitting some deep fire now. I mean, I would encourage all of you to go back and rewind that and listen. I heard it said this way, that note takers are history makers. So man, I'm taking notes while we're sitting here talking. Why do you think so many people, because I'm really big on this doing versus being. I believe we live our whole lives doing, but we never become. Why do you think so many people focus on the doing more than the being, or are challenged in ever getting to that place of just being?
100%. because we live in a world that tells us our value is found in what we have, where we live, what
Sure.
we drive, and not in who we are, right? So who we are becomes kind of secondary to how we actually show up to others, in a sense, or how we represent who we are to others.
Right.
I think most of us walk around, as I was saying the other day, with a representative. This representative is this person that we hire over the years to show other people a version of us that we want them to see. And so I got a representative for the person that I work with. I got a representative for the people in my community. And so I'm constantly showing up, trying to be what I'm expected to be. And so when we live from that space of always trying to measure our value based on how we perform versus on who we are, which the byproduct of that turns into how we perform, but it's fulfilling versus just always trying to hit it every single day and try to be on point for others, then we escape from the prison of validation. We escape from the prison of saying, man, I have to, if I start to be, then I also have to take ownership of the areas in my life that I know I don't necessarily want to deal with. Those are the messy areas. So if I can build this life independent of that, build this image independent of that, I never have to really confront these things, and you only end up fooling yourself. And that's the truth at the end of the day. So the idea of doing versus being is really a broken identity, and a broken place that you've placed your identity.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. I love it. So with that said, let me transition into this. Why do people need a coach? And I want to read this. I wrote it down on the notes, right? Because you talked about being a coach, and I wanted to ask the question, why do people need a coach? But I heard this the other day, and I want to see what your thoughts are on it, and then answer the question as well. It says the shortcut to any success you deserve is to find someone who has been there and done that. Invest in whatever they charge and do whatever they tell you to do. So with that little bit of that context there, what is a coach to Jovan? What in your own words, what does a coach mean?
100%. For me, a coach is perspective. I think that's the number one where I put it. And because we use the word a lot, we sometimes can diminish the power of the word. Life, the difference between surviving, thriving, existing, living, obstacle, opportunity, all these different nuances begins at perspective, right? But I can't give a perspective if I haven't gained truth, right? At the end of the day, I need to have a positive perspective. I need truth. And truth comes in different forms, whether it's experience, whether it's knowledge, whether it's sometimes just this hybrid relatability and saying, man, where you are going, I've been there. And you're not necessarily paying me so much for my time. What you're paying me for is, what you're paying for is not to put yourself in a position to make the same mistakes that I would have technically made as well. Yeah, you're paying me for my time, but if you ask me back in hindsight, if I would have went to a coach versus losing tens of $1,000s to figure it out, or give me the coach all day, every day, because the coach don't cost the type of money that you lose in ignorance because you lack perspective. So for me, a coach's perspective, man, and I think that the challenging thing is finding a coach that is going to stretch you to your capacity. That's where the conversation changes, because you can find a lot of people that can help you to be better, but not necessarily a lot of people that's going to help you to get a breakthrough. If I'm working with a client and I help you to achieve why you came to me, then I failed you. If I help you, Rob, to achieve what you came to achieve, what you paid me or hired me to achieve, I failed you. Because I didn't change the way you think. I didn't change your vision. I didn't help you to stretch your vision. I didn't help you to achieve what you didn't think was possible. That's my job as a coach, because if you're coming to me and say, hey, Jovan, I want to achieve X, Y, Z, and I help you achieve X, Y, Z, then why did you pay me? You didn't need to pay me. You need to go read some books and study some stuff and just gain the knowledge there. But if You come to me XYZ, my number one job is I'm asking three questions. Where are you? Where are you trying to go? And what's the one thing that we need to focus on to get there? Because the beginning of the journey for me is clarity. How clear are we on where we're going, in a sense? And we have to address now your core beliefs and all these different nuances, because what you perceive as a goal, Rob, is based on your perspective of what you think is possible because of how you think. So what if this goal that we now decide to agree on is actually a limitation on what you can actually achieve? So that's why it's so important. I think, number one, coaching is perspective, but number two, you got to find a coach that's going to stretch you to or past your capacity.
Yeah. So expound a little bit on the difference between better and breakthrough. I know you touched a little bit on it, but for those that are watching, because I think a breakthrough is greater than just getting better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sharing your own words what that means and clarify that for us.
100%. So better at the end of the day is going to be improvement. Breakthrough is autonomy. Whole different conversation. Better is improvement. I'm improving in these different areas. Breakthrough is autonomy. I now have everything it takes to take full ownership of this area in my life. And I also understand how this area has created other cycles. And now I can go out and be different than I've ever been in my life as a result of our time spent together.
Yeah.
Breakthrough is reversing generational curses and cycles. It's a whole different reality to what you thought would have been possible. It's changing your definition of normal. You have a definition of normal right now. Okay, that's normal to me. This has been a normal thing in my life. Breakthrough now changes your definition of what you once perceived as normal. I can't aim for better. There's a lot of better. Better is information, breakthrough is implementation, right? And so there are different pieces to that.
Man, I'm looking around for the choir, man. You just took us to Jovan Church there, man. Yeah, you're bringing it, bro. Spitting some serious fire there. I agree. I totally agree. So do you believe everyone needs a coach?
I love that question. If you asked me that 4 to 5 years ago, I'll tell you, yeah, and they all need to work with me. Let's go.
Right.
Breakthrough. Let's run through walls.
Yeah.
But I realize now in hindsight, a lot of people that believe they need coaching actually need healing.
That's good.
There's a difference. There's a difference between healing work and growth work. Right?
Right.
Healing is where we begin to really address trauma and anxiety, depression, the different nuances that obviously not just from a practical, hey, do these 3 different steps, or let's get to understanding productivity, your calendar, your clarity, all these different things are great. But healing goes layers deeper, because I will tell you, like, I've coached so many people, and 70% of the people that I've coached weren't ready for growth work. They needed to go through some healing work. But naturally, when we struggle in a certain area, somebody says, man, I keep procrastinating at the end of the day, or man, I hate the way I spend money. And you start working with them on mindset and vision and planning and systems and accountability and all that, but they still run into the same problem. I'm gonna share personal experience with you.
Okay.
There was a point in my life that I wanted to get some financial coaching, because I was like, man, when it comes to the concept of investing, I just don't have a heart or passion for it. I just don't know what it is. I'll invest all day, every day in myself, in my business. But you tell me go put money in stocks and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Good talk. I'm glad we had it. And so my mindset was to go get a coach, somebody who could help me, a mentor, somebody could help me walk me through this. And I realized one day on a bike ride, it hit me. I was like, I wonder if the reason I struggle with the excitement of investing is because I hadn't healed from losing my father. Follow me close. When you lose somebody in your life, you can very easily get into this mindset of the bottom falling out. And what that means is that at any given time, Rob, something can happen that changes everything. So why in the world would I put up money into something that will happen eventually or tomorrow when I kind of have this unresolved fear that tomorrow isn't necessarily promised, or I may not be here tomorrow to reap the benefits of that
Right.
investment.
Right.
So here I am thinking that it was more a mindset or skill set thing, when the truth at the end of the day was a heart set thing. There were some things that I needed to heal on that stopped me from truly getting to the position of doing that growth work. So to answer your question, I believe anybody could benefit from coaching, but I think it takes a really great coach, a selfless coach, to connect with a person, to have those powerful conversations, to become immersed in that process and to say, you know what, I know you want to go to Z, but I think we really need to talk about some healing work. And I think that's where our mental health professionals come in and different things like that. And I'm a huge fan and huge supporter of mental health professionals. I don't believe coaches should be doing mental health work, and I don't believe mental health professionals should be coaching. That's my stance on that. So I think to grow, we have to heal, and to continue to heal, we need to grow. So it's interesting. I think it's stages.
Yeah, no, I love that, man, because I believe even myself, I've been successful at different seasons in my life, but I also believe that that lack of healing sabotaged me from going to the next level, because a lot of
100.
successful, driven people, I have that D personality. If you've taken the DISC profile, that DI, I'm driven. I'm just going to get out there and make it happen. I'm going to make lemonade out of lemons. And that's a good thing. But a lot of times we do it at the expense of our healing.
100%.
So I love what you're saying, man. But real quickly, just to stay there before we move on, what are some tips right now to those that are watching? What are some tips that you would give someone who maybe is successful, maybe has a lot going on, looks like they have the perfect life, but they're really hurting inside? What is some advice you'd give them in this moment?
I think greatness dies in isolation. I think that greatness and influence dies in isolation. And so when you're in a position where you're always perceived, or you need to be perceived as the person that has the cape on, what do you do when the person who has the cape on, they say this way, Superman is also Clark Kent. And so what do you do in a position when you're a coach, you're a leader, you're a mentor, and now you begin to struggle with the thing you help other people with, right?
Yeah.
I think there's some really, really important pieces to this. I think number one, any leader, any person in a position of influence without a community of accountability will always fall in some area. So I think a community is essential. And it's not necessarily a community of your peers, so to speak, but a community where you have oneness of core beliefs. So whether that's a faith community, whether that's a wellness community, whatever the case is, this is my core value at the end of the day. And I have a community of other people around me, different personalities, different walks of life. Hey, I might be a CEO, but there's somebody in there that may fly kites for a living. But we have this oneness of vision, and through that, we have a brotherhood or sisterhood, essentially. So I think a community is huge. I think second, you need to have somebody that you connect with on a level that can kind of be your outlet, whether that's a mental health professional or whether it is a coach, somebody that you can truly build that type of relationship with, that you can have those type of powerful conversations without the fear of retaliation, right? Without the fear of, man, if I say this to this person, what happens then? So community at the end of the day, I think you have to have somebody to lean on. And then the third thing I think is super, super important. We have to truly get to a position in our lives. I think for most people that I even do coaching for, high level individuals, a high level of influence, we have to remain, trying to find the best way to put it so that you can follow it. We have to intentionally put ourselves in positions to remember why we do what we do.
That's good.
It's so easy to get caught up in the position and get caught up in the expectations of that position that we begin to disconnect from the why, the
Sure.
thing that was that fuel, that fire, that thing that really got you fired up to even be on this path, essentially. So I think those three things for me have always been important. I had a fourth thing in my life because, you know, my mentor would always tell people like, Jovan is probably the most driven person that I've ever met. Like, he will run through this wall at this time. Let's
Right.
go. And I'll get everybody to run through the wall with me too. And I used to be so honored that he would call me the most driven person ever, because this is somebody that is uber successful and around a lot of successful people. But then I sat down one day by myself and I was like, oh man, I've been driven from something and not necessarily driven to something. I said, man, I started my journey running from this experience that happened with my dad, but I never actually got to the point at that time as to what am I running to? Because I'm running from fear, but am I running to purpose? Am I running to faith? Or am I running to meaning? Because my dad died, yes, but I was still very much alive and I still had a purpose that he may have been an instrumental part of, but he wasn't the end of my purpose, if that makes sense. And so I had to evaluate and really understand that your purpose may be birthed from your pain, but not dealing with your pain will never allow you to be at peace in your purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's a next level too that I think is really important.
Yeah, no, that's so good, man. I totally agree. So with all this that you've shared with us,
Sure.
what is one leadership principle that you've really leaned into, that you learned, you leaned into, and that you're living from today? Can you share at least one of those leadership principles with us?
The power of vision. The power of vision. Okay.
So that's one of those words that everybody throws around. So give us the Jovan Glasglow definition.
I got you, man. So I believe that a vision is essential to any form of leadership. And it's not just a vision statement, but I think a vision has to have three C's, three very important C's. Number one, there has to be clarity of vision. Number two, there has to be connection to vision. And number three, there has to be a conviction from that vision. So clarity, connection, and conviction. Clarity comes from understanding. Okay, we have a deep level understanding of where we're going, why we're going there, why it's important. Connection comes from alignment. Okay, so the goal at the end of the day for me in a position where I'm leading my team now on the mental wellness side is saying, hey, how do we make sure that the why of the organization continues to align with the why of the people in the organization? Sure. Because alignment is what drives that connection. And then conviction is so important, because conviction comes from action, right? Comes from service. So when we start to show up and we start to actually put this vision in motion, we now have an expectation from the people we serve to execute with excellence. And so how are we learning from our customers? How are we staying engaged with the people that we're serving? How are we staying engaged with our team members on a day-to-day basis? Sure. All those things, I believe, couple with and help to fuel the vision. Because a lot of times we create vision, but we struggle with casting and cultivating vision. And the word division is actually divided visions. That's really what division is. It's divided visions.
Good. Yeah.
So we start from a vision of the organization, then we make sure that we have clarity, connection, and conviction there. Clarity, connection, conviction there with the leadership team. Clarity, connection, and conviction with the people that we serve as well. Vision to me is the thing that there's so many more layers to it, but I think that is the encompassing thing of where you drive ownership, where you drive innovation, excitement, response, culture. It all stems from having not just any vision, but a vision that you have clarity, connection, and conviction. I live my life on this principle. It's in a book that I have coming out that's called Vision and Giants. It says, without a vision, you'll be destroyed by distraction. So without a vision, you will be destroyed by distraction. And it speaks so much to how a vision is what helps us to focus. And to focus, we need a vision, if that makes sense. So that's really, really important, I think, in my life and from going from just good leadership and good impact to next level,
Right.
vision is such a powerful thing, man.
No, I agree. And I know my greatest failures, my greatest lulls, my greatest mishaps has been when I got away from that vision, from living on purpose, if you will. And so, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I asked this question and three more things, if we will. I know we've been going just a little bit, but thank you for being so generous for your time. But three more questions here real quickly. I asked this to everyone that comes on the podcast. If there was one word that you would use to describe yourself, what would that one word be?
One word that I use to describe myself: platform.
Okay. So how has that word platform help you get to the next level or to where you're at today?
Sure. At the end of my life, it's the same word that I want the people who have impacted to describe me as. Jovan was a platform. He was this person, this impact, this voice, this opportunity, this connection that I was able to, for lack of a better word, stand on to reach my potential, to reach my purpose. It's the way that I choose to serve. I always say, hey, at the end of the day, how can I serve this person by helping them to just get one step closer to reaching their actual thing, right? And so I use the word platform because you can't be you can't be a platform with pride, right? And that's one thing I'm really intentional about. I'm intentional about being a bridge, and a bridge connects two sides, but we forget that a bridge also gets walked on. And so it's staying in that position of humility and service and saying that my job at the end of the day is to be stable, is to be sturdy, is to be accessible. These are the things that a platform is, of course, to just help that person get to that next level in a sense. So I know that was different than
No, I
the
love
word you're
that
looking
because
for.
I think so many people have it backwards. So many coaches or so many successful people use people as platforms to ultimately live out their purpose instead of being a platform for many others to live out their purpose or to help them get out their
100%.
purpose.
100%.
And so I love that. And even this morning, I did a video on my TikTok channel about humility, that as a Christian man, there's this war every day between the kingdom of Rob and the kingdom of God, right? And I have to make a choice which one I'm going to serve that day, but it takes humility, right? And humility is one of those words that we've discounted, we've glossed over, we don't like hearing about in this culture, or if we talk about it, it's just our very diluted version of what humility really is. And so with that said, let me ask you this, just one of these spontaneous questions again here. What does humility mean to you?
Humility to me is when there's no part of me that rejects any part of God. Yeah. let me simplify it a little bit.
Okay.
As a man of faith, a man who, stands on the truth that I believe that God is who he says he is, and that my life is a life of love and service to all of mankind. It's to also come into alignment with what I have made the decision to be, or what I agree with as being God's law, which is the way I should live my life.
Sure.
And so humility for me is when there's no part of my life that conflicts with any part of God's law, whether that's loving your neighbor as yourself, whether that's to become the least among, whatever the case may be, is when there's no part of me that rejects any part of God. That's what humility means to me. I can't go wrong in that way.
Man, I love that definition. So as we get ready to close here today, there's different people that watch this. I'm in the insurance space. Medicare, under 65 health is what we label it. So a lot of insurance professionals, agents, agency owners watch this, but there's also different entrepreneurs. I wanted to interview people in different spaces. I just recently had Coach Michael Burke on, who's a life coach, motivational speaker, author like yourself. We have some real estate people on. We've had some financial people on in the past, have some more coming up. So I have a very diverse audience, because really what I've noticed is that no matter what kind of leader in whatever space that I interview, there's a common thread with all of them. And so with that said, for this diverse audience that's watching this, what's some words of wisdom that maybe you would give them in regards to maybe they're wanting to invest in themselves, maybe they're wanting to bet on themselves, maybe they're watching this right now and they're wanting to take a leap of faith, right? To maybe be an entrepreneur or whatever the case may be. What are some words that you would give them to help them maybe take that leap of faith?
The pursuit of perfection really only produces one thing, and that's procrastination. Let me say it again. The pursuit of perfection really only produces one thing, and that's procrastination. When I look back in my life, the truth is I took a lot of messy action to getting to where I am right now. Yeah, I learned a lot along the way, and there were some calculated decisions in certain pieces. But anytime I focused on being perfect, I become stuck at the input, or as I would say, paralyzed at the input. And so I decided that it wasn't going to be pursuing perfection, but I was going to focus on executing with excellence. And executing with excellence for me means to maximize input, here we go again, and measure the outcome versus trying to control the output or outcome and become stuck at the input.
Sure.
So for me, and for anybody listening, I think it's so easy to get into this perfectionism mindset that, man, it has to be perfect. I have to have it right. I have to have all the things done before I make a move, before I scale, whatever the case may be. But the pursuit of perfection really only produces one thing, and that's procrastination. I think that is that's been like the message and the tone of what I've been speaking about lately. But on the other side, I've been really talking a lot about grit, growth, and then glory. Grit, growth, and then glory. So I got this 2-minute spiel. I'm gonna give it to you really quick before I get off of here.
Yeah,
because I think it's really powerful.
Man. Yeah.
All right, cool. I got to transform really quick. So it says grit, growth, and then glory. I know ideally we want to have the substance without the struggle. We want the destiny without the disappointments. We want the vision without the giants, and we want the comeback without the setback. We want the glory without the grit and the growth. But what we fail to comprehend is that what makes winning significant is the losses that we have to endure in the pursuit of what we desire, aspire, or conspire to create. Or let me say it a different way. Losing makes winning worth it. I mean, if there was no, then yes would carry no weight. If your first business idea worked, then you'd be an overnight success, but next week's greatest tragedy. If you never knew a broken heart, you'd never know real love. And if you never experienced death, you'd never embrace the fragility of life. No grit, no growth, then no glory. I know we hate the pain, the turmoil, the rejection we have to face. And we hate these things because we have a broken perspective about what it really means to be successful. You see, we equate success to just accomplishments, not realizing that true success is not just about what you accomplish, but who you become in the pursuit of your accomplishments. But here's the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. Freedom will cost you friendships. Your calling will cost you comfort. And success will cost you security. But listen to me closely. In this life, you'll never have substance without struggle. You'll never have destiny without disappointments. You'll never have vision without giants. And if you don't break, you'll never experience a breakthrough. No grit, no growth, and no glory.
Man, I love it.
Fired up every time, brother.
Yeah, bro. That was like lightning. That was like lightning round spitting fire, bro.
Gets me fired up every time.
Man, I love that, man. I love that, Sully. Well, you listen, I'm definitely a fan, man. Met you, like I said, about a month ago. Just felt like we had kindred spirits. I believe it was a God-ordained moment that I was supposed to be there in Clearwater. Believe that God has put us together for life. And looking forward to doing some things with you. I know in God's timing, he's going to make that happen. But before we close and end this, tell us where we can find you. Are you on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook,
Sure.
and also tell us a little about this book that's coming up.
Sure. I am Jovan Glasglow. That's literally my handle for everything. And it's actually my website as well. I am JovanGlasgow.com.
Okay.
Book coming out called Vision and Giants. It says, don't allow the size of your giant to distort, diminish, or minimize the magnitude of your vision. It's a really powerful book. The whole essence is a lot of times when we cast a vision, we run into what I call giants. And a lot of what happens is that giants begin to somewhat diminish the magnitude of our vision or childlike wonder, the way we show up, the way we execute. But what we're learning and realizing, there's some other twist in the book too, is that sometimes it takes a giant externally to awaken the giant internally. And so it's really, really powerful book. I have vision and giants, and then after that, barrenness to breakthrough. So we got some things in the pipeline, and we're looking here in the next 8 months, we should be live with vision and giants first.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, listen, man, you've been so generous with your time. And as we wrap up today, I just want to look in the camera real quickly to those that are watching this. And listen, I truly believe that all of you were made on purpose for a purpose. The reason I do this podcast is because I just want at least one person that just wakes up from that slumber, that just stops existing and says, I was created to thrive. I was created to live and not just exist. But Jovan can't make you do it. I can't make you do it. But I pray that something that we said today put fresh wind in your sails and just inspired you to bet on yourself and to take that leap of faith. Once again, I just want to say, make sure to comment, like, subscribe. Listen, he just gave us like probably a $10,000 coaching session for no cost. So go back and rewatch this and take notes over and over again and take all the nuggets that he shared with us today and put them into action. God bless you guys. Have an awesome day, and we will talk to you soon.